Hello and welcome to the introduction to CIV173 Engineering Sustainability. I'm going to show you how to access the material and what my expectations are of you on the course. So hopefully you can all get into Muse and you'll be familiar with reaching a location like this where you've got your Google Mail and Google Calendar and so on. You can go for all services and then you get this full list here rather than just a summary if you want. So you're wanting to go to Blackboard. When you log into Blackboard, you'll see the courses that you are going to take. I get quite a few courses. If you go onto courses here, you can filter this. So if you did courses, and then if I typed in 173 here, I would get them for the last few years. So 2021 is probably the only one you'll see. So if you click onto that, you'll then get into the actual Blackboard page. If you click on this link here at the top, you start to see the module page. Always worth looking at these. You can see what the intentions are of what you're wanting to achieve and how you're going to be measured. There's very often links in here as well, and it tells you kind of splits of coursework and what's going to happen. If I just go back to here, you get my mugshot and my contact details, and then we've got this module map of week by week what the expectations are. So this week is week 1, and all you have to do this week is read this introduction, and we'll start the course proper next week where there's going to be things each week. Just navigating Blackboard, online tutorials will be where you can come and talk to us. So for instance, if I click on here, there's a session planned for Tuesday morning. So Tuesday morning, if you click on here, you'd be able to come in and talk to myself and some others like a tutorial. But most of the work will be done offline in your own time, and you'll come to these sessions to ask questions. Under the other section here, course content autumn, if you click on autumn, if you look at this section here, engineering sustainability, I will flesh this out in more detail, but in week 1, I'm telling you the day it is, week commencing the 28th. Please just watch the introduction video, and then when I finish this video, will be a link to the video that you're watching now. And then in week 2, I'm going to be using a workbook for this course. So week 2, which is week commencing the 5th. Please watch chapter 1 intro video, which will be this link here, and then read chapter 1 of the workbook. There'll be a separate link for the workbook itself, which you'll have to read, and then just a short introduction from myself. So that's just navigating Blackboard. That will be useful for all courses. They'll all look slightly different. The other one you'll do with me is CIV1900. I'm going to use a similar format for that. So a little bit about the introduction of this module, what it's about. So I've just prepared a few slides just to talk through. So, introduction to engineering sustainability. Why would we have this module and what's it about? But first of all, a little bit about myself. I'll be teaching the whole of semester for this course, engineering sustainability, which has got the code CIV173, and I'll also take you for the first 6 weeks of the engineering skills course, where you'll do hand drawing and Revit. There's some links between the two modules, as you'll see later. My name is Paul Hulbert. My office is F122 in Mapping Building, although hardly ever in the office at the moment, mainly working from home, just coming in to see tutees 1 or 2 days a week. That's my email address. You're welcome to email me, although we will be encouraging the use of discussion boards for 2 main reasons. One is that you can ask questions anonymously, which students usually prefer, And the other thing is I can see common questions being asked and other students can see the answers. So you can have an anonymous post on something that's, say, unclear point in the course, and I can answer it and other people can see that answer, and therefore minimise the number of people asking the same questions. So a bit about myself. I've had over 20 years of experience in the water industry. Before I came to university, I did what they called a sandwich degree in those days, which is a degree with a year in industry. I thoroughly enjoyed my year in industry and went back to work for the company that I worked for in that year, and mainly water and wastewater projects. Overall, my view on engineering, it's very interesting. It's never a dull day, there's always something to do. It's challenging mentally, it's a team sport, you work in groups, you work with other engineers. Most of the things I did were bespoke, which means that it's a unique project that was never repeated, so it always kept your interest. In my spare time, I'm an outdoor and activity enthusiast, so I do a lot of walking, cycling and running. I live out in the Peak District, so enjoy my commute over to the university, usually on my bike. So just to give you a flavour of what working in the water and wastewater industry might look like, this is a water treatment works. There's the river here, which was water being pumped out of the river for treatment, but because the flow in and out of the treatment works and the flow in the river isn't even, there was a huge reservoir created here, like it's called bankside storage, so we could create water here, enable to pump a constant rate through the treatment works. In context, this huge kind of aircraft hangar here was the old process, and all this works here. This part was the admin block, and all this was being replaced by this, and this was the new build. So that just shows you how technology changes over 10, 20, 30 years. This was called slow sand filters, so you had large areas, and these were rapid gravity filters, so you could put a lot more flow through if you made the filters more efficient. So this was a typical water treatment plant. This would have been a site at the side of an existing site, and we were keeping flow going, keeping water going to the consumers whilst still building this, working with the operators on site and the client. This project also had a wind turbine at the side because it was in a very good location for that. Here's the mucky side of the business. This is the wastewater treatment works. Very environmentally friendly. What you're really doing is cleaning up the water, dirty water from sewage, and creating it suitable to go into the river. So here's the outfall of the river. This is a significant treatment works for the whole of Wakefield, and this was the old site, and we had to build a new site. This size is the size of a couple of football pitches and about 6 meters deep, so size of a domestic house in depth, and some new tanks. So a whole host of, this is the site setup. So quite a big project, usually tens of millions of pounds, and it normally lasted a couple of years, and I did several of these over my 20 years in industry. I'm telling you this just so you know the kind of questions you can ask me and where I'm coming from. I was a civil engineer. I did the same degree as you're doing, civil and structural, and then went into industry, ended up going to project management eventually, and then came to university. So the reasons for doing this course and the reasons for my interest, the climate change problem is probably the biggest problem facing the world today. The pandemic has given us an idea of how disruptive things can be when systems get disrupted. Engineers need to understand the currency of carbon. You need to be able to understand that the decisions we make as engineers and as individuals are very significant, and how we can make those changes that are required for us to avoid significant disruption in the future if we choose to do nothing. To run this course, especially with this being offline, I'm going to have just very short introduction videos to each chapter, and I've created a bespoke workbook. So what I've done is I've gone through each of the main topics, which I'll show you in a minute, that I want you to engage in, and taken what I have seen to be the palatable and interesting parts of each subject. So there'll be a book to read, and there'll be some links in that workbook to read further. And then there'll be a series of quizzes. Some of them are summative, which means that they're marked and they go towards your final grade. I'm expecting you to read and research beyond the workbook that I give you, but not to a significant degree, and I'll clearly signpost in the workbook where you must read this, or please go to this link if you want to know more. And then there will also be coursework to submit in week 11. So here's a bit more detail. So you're in week 1, so here's the weeks going down this side. This is the introduction, and that's all you've got to do. Give you a bit of rest this week. There's more to do in my other module this week, so keeping it quite nice and light. Next week there will be a chapter of the book called The Big Picture, and again, nothing to actually do other than read that and read around it. The third one will be pestle in relation to sustainability. So again, you probably don't know what that means, but you will do when you've read the chapter. And then at the end of week 3, there's a quiz worth 12.5%. The quiz will cover everything up to date, and then the same repeats in week 6 and week 9. So the highlighted area in week 9 is the end of the quizzes. By then you will have covered 40%. These quizzes won't be ridiculously difficult, but they will force you to engage with the material, and you'll have time to look at the quiz questions, read back at the material which you'll have access to, and then effectively answer those questions. So there will be some more deep searching questions and some fairly straightforward ones. The idea is you should be able to get to kind of the 40% of coverage by effectively looking up information and giving your opinion on information rather than doing actually some hard maths. The coursework is going to be worth 60%, so the lion's share, and that's going to be a life cycle assessment. So whilst we'll do a quiz to make sure you've understood life cycle assessment, life cycle analysis, we're then going to let you do an individual piece of work. So the quizzes will check, as I've said, a range of information, some of your deep thinking and reading, and some of the maths you'll use to prepare you for the coursework. So just checking that you've engaged with the material. The coursework will be an individual submission. It'll overlap and develop on the Revit coursework, where you're going to create a 3D model of a building and look at that embodied carbon of that particular one solution in 1900. You're going to compare it to other options on a conceptual design in this module. You'll basically be carbon accounting, and what I want you to do is to understand the importance of boundaries.